Welcome to Range World, the podcast where life, development, leadership, growth, intentionality, and experience come into balance right before your very ears. And now, here's your tour guide into Range World, the president of Get Life in Balance, Rain Kansman.
Welcome back to Rain's World, and I actually have kind of a unique setup this time. Usually I'm back to back with my guests, but today we're side by side.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce my good friend and one of my favorite mentors, Mr. Paige Glasgow. Paige was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, graduated Grove City College in 1957 with a BA in History and Poli-Sci.
Right.
Yeah. Commissioned then to go to the U.S. Air Force, served 6 years as a Strategic Air Command as an electric warfare officer, and was also part of the crew on a B-47 bomber. That's great. Thank you for your service.
Days.
Yeah, thank you for your service. He got his MBA from Wayne State University. He also went to work at Burroughs Corporation, selling computers, training to new salesmen, joined Wilson Learning to recruit agents to sell training materials. In 1982, he moved to London. And I love this part of the story. He moved to London to open Wilson Learning, Great Britain. While there, he conducted training in France, Switzerland, Finland, Belgium, Sweden, and Japan. We just talked about that story. Then he returned to the US to handle the General Motors account, brought him back to the Detroit area. Then he was recruited to form a consulting firm in Troy, and then founded his own consulting firm and company that later merged with Performance Technologies in Dayton, Ohio, where he and I did a lot of work together at that point. He's held training seminars, as we said, Hong Kong, Tokyo, Australia, New Zealand. Leadership and communications, negotiation and management were some of the favorites. And I forgot the Philippines, Colombia, Mexico, Vancouver, Buenos Aires. Retired since 2015. You just retired 1 year before I did.
Right.
Yeah. Stayed up to date currently with trends in leadership, and his only hobby is reading 3 newspapers a day and current books. This is my friend Paige Glasgow. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so today we wanted to talk about, when I asked, he chose empathy and the leader within. So Paige, why is empathy such an important characteristic for a leader?
Well, because I think some people think of being a leader means you got to be the tough, macho guy, and you're supposed to know everything. And so I'm speaking of the sort of the macho leader. Well, I don't need to know or feel for these people. So I better be pushy and macho and not care about them. And more I see, especially as I get older, you can see the gray hair here. As a matter of fact, it's not even gray, it's white. How important it is to understand the other side and people, where they're coming from and what they're going through in their lives, and especially in their work lives. And I think back to my days in Great Britain, and salespeople especially. And I think back to this American who went over to Great Britain and took his American sales style to his British sales force, and failed to show any empathy for these poor Brits.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's so important.
Oh man, you and I have talked for a long time, and you know that I agree with that. I think people are afraid that if they're not tough and strong, that they'll get run over, and that vulnerability actually draws people to you, doesn't it?
Right, sure does. Yeah.
So what are some of the other benefits a leader can be? Because again, for some people, it's taking a risk to be empathetic in that way. So what are some of the benefits I could get by being more empathetic?
Well, you used the term vulnerability, and I think it takes a while to learn to kind of let go and be, well, vulnerable. We're using that word. I remember a situation early on in Britain, and I'm thinking about, well, what are ways that I can get the salespeople? And I had 3 salespeople and a performance consultant, and so I'm thinking, well, how can I communicate better with them? And I'm basically, then I was a morning person. So I had a brilliant idea. I'm going to have breakfast with these guys. Okay. All right. And so I said, well, we're going to meet at the hotel. I lived in Windsor. And so we're going to meet at the hotel in Windsor at 8:30 and have breakfast. And we'll do that once a week. And we can talk about all of the issues and things that are going on in your life. And when I announced that to the group, there was dead silence. And I didn't understand, because I thought there was going to be great interest in it. And later on, when my empathy switched on, did I realize that, first of all, the British workday begins about 9:30 or 10, all right? And meeting with the boss for breakfast at 8:30 or 9 was not seen as anything but punishment. and so that was not one of the best ideas that I ever had.
Yeah, I'm sure it didn't come off well.
Not at all.
And I think as we go through this, at least a couple of things from my experience that that may or may not tie in for folks. When I was in the kitchens and I was a chef, because I grew up in the kitchens, it was harder for me to be vulnerable as a leader. When I got into this one role that I did with Cisco Corporation, I moved into operations, and I'd never been part of that department. They just thought I had good leadership skills, and that's what they needed at the time. It was easy to be vulnerable because I knew nothing. I mean, that was survival at that. But I learned so much, Paige, by being being empathetic and understanding, and I understood so much more about the department and the people. And I really think that helped them trust me more. You know?
When you're willing to ask for help, I think that that's great from a leader. Now, when I was in London, I didn't really have anybody to ask for help. My boss was not one you could ask for help, and he was kind of a macho leader. And if I mentioned his name, the world would laugh and say, I know exactly who you mean. And so I was pretty much on my own. And if you have a mentor or someone who you could go to and say, hey, I'm having a little difficulty with this issue. What would you do? That would really make it easy for you to um, find the right way.
Mhm.
Now, I have a very empathic wife, and she's never been in business. She's a school teacher, but she's brilliant in that she understands people, and she's got a huge dose of empathy. So she was a great sounding board over there with the Brits.
Oh, that's perfect. That's great to have. And that, yeah, I share that also with my wife. That's, yeah, more than helpful. And I like what you said. Again, if you have that mentor or somebody, and especially if it's the person you directly answer to, and they have the empathy, then you're more willing to share. Gosh, I don't know how to handle this. I'm not sure, and not feel like, boy, it's the last day on your job.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So you had another topic you wanted to talk about, the leader within, unless he's, but sometimes Paige surprised me and he blends all this stuff together and I catch on somewhere down the road. But what do you mean by leading from within? What does that mean?
I've been thinking about this, and leadership is a ethereal thing. It's not concrete.
Okay.
You can't put your finger on it. I don't think you can teach it. I think it comes, excuse my pun almost, but it comes from within.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a personal example. Kind of a tragic example. About 25 years ago or so, my son was in an automobile accident in which his wife of about 2 months was killed. And I had never been through anything like this. And yet I had to handle everything. I had to handle the funeral. I had to handle the legalities of the autopsy and all of that. And I had to deal with her parents because she was from North Carolina. And I had to handle my own grief and my son's grief. And there's no book written for that kind of stuff. And I had as I said, no experience. I had no experience with death. And I had my son, who I was trying to help, and he was injured, but not seriously. But so I just did what I did, and I didn't have a book. As I said, I didn't have, you do this or you do that. So I just did what I felt was the right thing to do. So I called people in my family and in her family. I said, this is what we did. I leaned on my wife, and so we told the parents of I'm losing the name of my daughter-in-law. Yeah. Okay, but we arranged to meet them at the airport. All right, we made arrangements with the funeral director. We made arrangements for with insurance and with a medical director for autopsy. And so we made legal arrangements and funeral arrangements and family arrangements and all of those things. And we just kind of went down the list of all of the time grieving and crying, and yet knowing that these things had to be done and that there wasn't anybody else to do them. And you look back on it, and if that isn't leadership, I don't know what is.
Right.
And that totally came from a sense of values, a sense of taking care of your children and doing what is right for Karen. I got her name now.
Okay.
Doing what's right for Karen and her parents,
Sure.
and making sure that everything is done in an appropriate and ethical and supporting manner. And that situation is the kind of thing that I think is leading from within.
Wow, powerful. It's powerful, Paige. That's I concur. As you were talking about that story, I was fully immersed in picturing where you were going. And then when you talked about that, if that isn't leadership, it put me immediately in a situation in my first big leadership role, as a young 27-year-old, and I got in charge of a kitchen staff of 40 people, and I wanted it, and I tried, but when I got there, I went, holy cow, I'm not qualified for this. And not the same, again, not the same tragedy that created that, but that feeling of helplessness. When I got there, I'm told today by those people that work for me that I did a good job. But at that time, I couldn't tell you that.
Right.
I couldn't tell you that.
Yeah.
So as we go through that, Paige, how does someone learn to lead from within? I mean, how do we do that?
I don't know that you learn, but I think as you go through life, you pick up a set of values. You pick up a set of things that become important to you. As we were growing up, as I said, my dad was a pretty rough father. Okay, and he drank a lot, and he beat us up a lot. Okay, and being the eldest, I took the brunt of that, but also he taught us some values.
Okay.
And he taught us to respect elders, respect women, which is kind of ironic because he basically browbeat our mother, but he also taught us that when we grow up, we don't want to be like him.
Oh, wow.
And
yeah,
but
helpful.
he taught us a work ethic, and he taught us to respect elders, respect authority, and do the right thing. And somehow you didn't have to define the right thing. You grew up with a knowledge of what the right thing was. And we didn't really go to church much, although I went on my own as a teenager, less for the spiritual value and more for the social. But we all seem to have grown up with a basic set of ethics. And I think that's where all of that came from.
And I love that on several levels, because you're confirming one of my beliefs. And in a lot of the programs that I do, especially the leadership programs, we spend a lot of time around values.
Yeah.
And helping people find that center, what's important. And my belief is I may have not hit my goals for the day, but if I can look at myself in the mirror at night and say I live by my values today, I
Right.
succeeded.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we succeeded here, my friend. I really appreciate having this opportunity to visit with you and being the first one to do it face to face.
Yes, that
It's
was
only
fun.
appropriate.
Yeah, it's so much easier. I have to say that you can deal so much better face to face than you can with the ubiquitous Zoom.
Yeah.
All right. And there's just something, technology is great at bringing people together in an artificial way, but there's nothing better than pressing flesh and face-to-face communication. So thank you.
You got it. And I hope to be able to do that soon again with you, my friend.
Okay. Enjoy it.
Yeah. Thank you. Hit the recorder. This has been another leadership lesson from Rain's World. If this kind of learning whets your appetite, leaving you wanting for another helping of this kind of content, visit me at getlifeinbalance.com.